Welcome back to Murder with the Missus. I'm Darren.
And I'm Amy.
And I'm Haley.
And today we're going to tell you about Casey Pomeroy and Caleb Guillory.
Don't forget to smash that like button. Check out the description for the links of all of our podcast platforms, CashApp, and Buy Me a Coffee. Like, share, subscribe, and don't forget to tell your friends.
Hi, everybody. Darren is not feeling very well today, so he is off camera and just doing our IT work.
You're stuck with me.
So you have Haley stepping in. And we had to kind of scooch, so ignore the neons behind me. They're for a friend. Okay. Sometimes people ask me how I find cases or how I decide what to do. And it can be anything from a news article that sends me down a rabbit hole, listener submissions, to me just falling asleep watching TV. And when I wake up, something else completely is on. And that's what happened here. I haven't been able to get this case out of my head for a while now, so here we are. And there's 6 people involved in the case, so I tried to put them all in the case pick on your screen so that you can reference them as we go. I'm a visual person, so it helps me remember who's who, and maybe it'll help you too. We start with Casey and Caleb, who grew up in Eagle Point, Oregon, and apparently they had been friends since they were about 9 years old, so they were basically raised together. They were always with each other at each other's houses. And then you throw in Chuck at some point too. I'm not sure exactly when he came into the picture, but they've all been friends for a very long time. Casey's sister said, growing up, Caleb was over at our house, and the same with Chuck. I remember growing up with these 3 big boys going everywhere with us.
The 3 amigos.
That's it. They were together like glue. Now, Casey's dad said that they were just really good buddies. Like they all got along really well, and you get one, you get them all. And they stayed close as they got older. Caleb was more chill, introverted. He didn't like to be the center of attention. Casey was the opposite of that. He had a zest for life. So it was no surprise to anyone when Caleb stayed in Oregon after high school, but Casey had stars in his eyes. He moved to LA to pursue an acting career. And he planned on making it big. Oh, honey, everyone does. He did land a little spot on The Bold and the Beautiful, that old soap opera that used to be on. I don't even know if it's still on anymore. Do they even play soap operas anymore? Well, somebody's going to have to tell me.
Days of Our Lives for sure.
Yeah? Okay, Darren shook his head, yep. But it wasn't a big role. And he was...
General Hospital.
Oh, okay. General Hospital. Oh, I used to watch that one. But he didn't have a big role on it. It was just like a little small spot. But he was out there grinding. He was still going, putting himself out there. Now, a couple of years in, he needed some money. So he started doing landscaping work in Fresno. So he would go back and forth to LA to keep trying to make it big. He didn't want anyone to know that he was struggling, so he compartmentalized his life. The LA time was all about acting, and Fresno time was all about making money. And they were 2 completely separate things for him. And it would be in Fresno that he met Barbara.
Old Barb.
Old Barb. And it's funny you say it like that because she was 22 years older than Casey.
Oh my gosh. No, I was just kidding.
So, I mean, she looks great. I could only hope,
good.
But still.
Okay, Barb.
Barb?
You want some candy?
No, stop. She didn't lure him into her van. Casey was described as an old soul who gravitated towards older women. That's just what he liked. Plus the fact that Barb was also a nurse practitioner made it a little easier for Casey to keep pursuing his dream and going back and forth to LA. Now, it was around that time back in Oregon that Caleb married Carly. And she had come from Seattle to work as a town planner, and Caleb just fell in love. And to speak on how close the guys were, I read that Casey actually officiated their wedding. And then Caleb was a groomsman in Casey and Barb's wedding in 2012. Now, Casey and Barb did move into a house together in Fresno, and the couples would vacation together and get together whenever they could. In 2015, Casey is telling friends that being a kept man is not working out for him. He wanted to contribute to the household, to balance things out a little, basically have more control over his own life without having to depend so heavily on somebody else. And it would come out later that allegedly Barb was maybe pushing him in that direction, that she was unhappy about carrying the weight all the time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So he thought he had a sugar mama, is what it was.
Yeah, right. But after a few years, she was feeling like maybe he needed to try something else. Acting isn't putting any food on that cougar's table, so she needed something stable. He decided that maybe physical therapy was something that he would be good at, and that meant that he would need to go to med school. He found out that there was one in California that he liked, but it also had a branch in the Caribbean. So it was pretty easy to talk Barb into selling all their stuff and moving to the island of Anguilla. And in 2018, they moved into an apartment within spitting distance of the ocean in the Island Harbor District. They settle in, get along with all the other islanders, and he's in school. Life is good. Casey wants Caleb and Chuck to come and check it out, so they invite the group over to come ring in the new year in this literal postcard picture perfect place that they now call home. And that was also not hard to sell because Caleb and Carly flew in on December 28th and Chuck and his wife Alicia got there December 30th.
To anyone that we know, family, friends, whoever, acquaintances, we will come visit if you move to an island.
Yeah, you want to
It's
go
happening.
to an island? We'll be there to support you.
Just let me know.
Yeah, exactly. Hell, we might not even leave after we get there. You might get some roommates. Now that the whole gang is here, at the beach, not here, they watch the sunset on the beach and then they walk down the beach to a bar. Now, this is a loose term to call it a bar because it was described as a shack with a couple of tables. But it gets the job done. They have some drinks and then they head back down the beach to the apartment at about 9 p.m. But on the way, Casey realizes that he left his flip-flops somewhere in the sand by the bar. So that made me question really, how much did they have to drink if he completely forgot he had shoes?
Yeah.
But I digress. So Chuck, Alicia, and Carly go back to the apartment while Caleb and Barb head back to the bar to go flip-flop hunting with Casey. All that walking apparently had made them thirsty. So at the bar, they got one rum and coke. Casey left the drink on a table and they hunted the flip-flops, but they couldn't find them. So Casey picked up that drink and took it with him. Along the way, they all three shared that drink. Now, shortly after they got back to the apartment, it was about 9:30, Barb gets sick. So she goes into the in-suite bathroom and starts throwing up. When she comes out of the bathroom, Casey is there. He also isn't feeling good.
Oh, it's about to get bad.
Yeah. So they hear something in the living room, and that was Caleb collapsing and having a seizure. Carly puts his head in her lap and is trying to hold him still. Chuck and Alicia hear the commotion and come running in from the balcony. Caleb is unresponsive and stops breathing, so Casey starts doing CPR. Alicia runs outside yelling, and the neighbors tell her to call 911. Why are you out here yelling at us? Go call the cops. She called them at 9:49 p.m. Now, EMS arrived in about 15 minutes, and they find Caleb laying on his back. He has a swollen right eye and bruises on his body. But they're too late. 37-year-old Caleb has died. But it doesn't stop there, because at this time, Casey is having a seizure in the bedroom.
What the hell?
Yeah. So focus shifts to Casey, and they get him loaded and rushed to the hospital. But sadly, 37-year-old Casey would be pronounced dead at the hospital shortly after. The scene was fucking chaos. So EMS and the police have no idea what was going on. So they bring the final four to the hospital to get them checked out. Now remember, Barb is sick too. So when they check her, they say that she has symptoms like Caleb and Casey, but extremely mild compared to what they had. All in all, the final four were drunk, but okay. But something was a little off about them. The incident report shows, based on abnormal behavior, and then in parentheses it says absent-minded, of the survivors, they were taken to the Princess Alexandra Hospital for medical treatment where they were treated and discharged. So they didn't have to keep them or anything. They were discharged from the hospital and they were brought to the police station because they had to answer some questions. There were police who stayed back to process the apartment, and their report says that they recovered substances suspected to be cocaine and MDMA, or ecstasy, from the scene. Preliminary screening urine tests performed at Hughes Medical Center were positive for cocaine, so they all had it in their system.
Booger sugar.
She hates that term.
I don't like it.
But it is funny, so. Yes, sir.
I thought she was going to get fancy with it and be like, booger sugar.
Booger sugar.
You wish.
I mean, at least make it funny.
Right? Entertain the people.
Booger sugar.
Let's just turn the camera. Dad,
Yeah, because you needed to see that. Oh. Now, they have been partying. There he is. They have been partying, and I know there's already been more red flags than a red flag factory for me, but there's more to come. Like that the final four were never questioned about the drugs that were found in the apartment that we know of. And the friends are all saying the same thing, that they left a drink unattended at the bar. The three shared it on the way back. They all had different levels of sickness, so obviously the drink had to be spiked. They were poisoned. Now, word was spreading around the island, though, that the couples had been partying and that there were drugs all over a table and the men had died of overdoses. And they went through this calling cocaine a white person's drug. So now they're like, all these white people over here just couldn't handle their shit. And the islanders are really kind of offended that the final four are saying that the drink was spiked, because apparently alcohol is a very, very held at a high standard over there, and you don't do that. That's just a big no-no.
Interesting.
Yeah, so the people around them were like, hold up, you can't just throw out accusations like that. Now, the final four are now in jail. They're not letting them go. They said later that it was really cold in there, and for the first 24 hours, they didn't get food or water. They were just like there. The next morning, after the men died, authorities called their families back in the States to notify them. Now, all that they could tell them at this point was that there'd been some sort of accident, because they just didn't know what the hell was happening at the time. And Casey's brother texted Casey's friend/agent. It's a guy that Casey used to stay with when he'd go to LA. And he told him that Casey had passed away. He was in Anguilla with his wife when it happened. And the friend was like, what wife?
Oh, just his sugar mama, Barb.
Who's Barb?
Don't.
This is how it came out, just how separate Casey had kept his LA life from his Fresno life, because nobody who knew him in LA even knew that he was married. What? Now, when he would go home to Fresno, he would tell his LA friends that he was just going there to do landscaping jobs. For 6 years that he was married to Barb, he was just landscaping.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. But let's get back to the island. I should throw that out there. We'll circle back to the double life here in a minute. So the final four are in jail, and the families of Caleb and Casey have about 50-11 questions. So they call a forensic specialist in the States to find out what all the medical examiner in Anguilla needs to take samples of and preserve now before the bodies are transported back to the States. And then they called over to the island to let them know.
No, that's smart.
Right. They're like, get this,
I
and
wouldn't
this.
think of that.
I know. They were on it. They had so many questions.
Mm-hmm.
Now, because people get used to the processes in their own country, they don't realize that every place is different. So this really stands out as smart thinking. So they were taking the steps to make sure that they could get the answers that they needed, of course. And this brings us to January 4th of 2019. Chuck's dad wired $40,000 over to the island, and the final four were released from jail without being charged. Now, some believe that they were released because this is a place that relies heavily on tourism, and that's how they're prosperous. This kind of thing, the bad press, would scare people away. So they're like, we don't want nothing to do with it. Get the hell off our island. But some believe that the authorities told them, we'll let you go for $10,000 apiece. And Chuck's dad was like, I got you. So do with that what you will. Now, an ME was brought in from another island to do the autopsies. And hold on to your butt for this one. Because Casey died from pulmonary edema, cardiac toxicity, cardiac ischemia, hypothermia, and seizures. Now, this seemed like it was maybe a typo on the hypothermia, because hypothermia is where your body temperature gets too low. But hyperthermia is more common with drug use because it raises your body temperature. So I don't know about that. But his shocker came in the form of the toxicology report. The fact that there was cocaine and MDMA in his system was expected because they found it at the apartment. But it shows the MDMA use produces blood levels in the range of about 100 to 250 ngmls, for those who like those, when taken at a typical recreational setting, right? Casey's level was 6,100 ngmls.
Damn.
Yes, that is 24 times higher than what is considered normal dosage. And this amount is high enough to kill a cow. Word is that before you even got close to that amount, like if you were taking it yourself, you would pass out. Like it's one of those drugs that you kind of can't overdose on because by the time you get to a level that would kill you, your body has already started to, like, you're out. You couldn't take anymore.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So that leads to the belief that he either didn't knowingly take all of that himself or that he would have had to ingest it all at once to receive the level that he was at. Now, Caleb did have lethal levels of cocaine and MDMA in his system as well, but he died as a result of asphyxiation, strangulation, multiple blunt force traumas, and seizures. He was strangled both manually and with a ligature, such as a belt or a rope.
Strangled? Okay, that's a plot twist.
Right? How does that happen? Final four? Answer that
Final
question.
four.
Yeah. So Barb would go on to tell her friends that she was charged with manslaughter when she was in Anguilla, saying it was because she was in the medical field and didn't intervene. Remember, she's a nurse practitioner, which is like right under a doctor. She knows that these things are dangerous. Right. She knows the levels that they can take safely. I mean, and she was not in there doing CPR or anything on either one of them. So it's like, what? But she was sick. Okay, she was sick. But reality is that none of the final four were ever charged with anything. They bought their way out of it, allegedly. So belief is that maybe that they threatened her, like, if you don't talk, then we can charge you with manslaughter. But she took it as, I was charged. She was never charged. But once the autopsies were done, before the report came out, all 6 left the island. They chartered a boat and went to St. Martin with the bodies. Word? As soon as they got to St. Martin, Barb and Carly immediately contacted a funeral home and had Caleb and Casey both cremated.
Oh my God. I'm sorry. It's just getting worse and worse.
Definitely getting worse. Barb would say that they had to leave the island quickly, that they were in danger. She never said how they were in danger, why they were in danger. She just said they were in danger. So they didn't have a choice. They couldn't wait for air transport to have the bodies brought back, even though allegedly a family friend had offered to send his private plane to pick all 6 of them up. So money doesn't seem to have been an issue. It was fear, according to Barb. Now, the families were pissed. Caleb's parents only had 2 kids, and one of them had already passed away. So Caleb was all they had left. Both families were robbed of seeing them one last time or giving them a proper burial. I didn't even see anything saying what happened to their ashes, so I just have to hope that the families at least got those.
Right.
When the 4 made it back to the States about a week later, they all went over to Casey's mom and stepdad's house, and Barb did all the talking. She tells them her version of events and that they had been poisoned, that they had received, the family had received the autopsy report by this time. And so they're like, but what about the strangulation? Can we talk about that?
Mm-hmm.
She tells them that they had changed it on the paperwork to say that, but that is absolutely not what happened. It was definitely poisoning.
Of course it was.
Yeah, so now she's blaming them. Oh, they just said that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Another thing we need to talk about is the life insurance. Always a heavy topic. Both men had it, and Barb and Carly were the main beneficiaries. Typical. Barb had already called the life insurance company when they were still in Anguilla, which some have said is kind of a strike against her because she called so fast. But the point of life insurance is to help cover costs if a person dies. So I would think that people probably call pretty quick when somebody passes away.
Mm-hmm.
I've had a lot of people die in my life, but none of them had life insurance. So I don't have any personal experience with it. And I couldn't tell you the appropriate amount of time it is to wait to contact a life insurance company, or if there even is one. So I digress. I just let you know that because it's part of the details. But what was really odd was that not too long before Casey's death, the secondary beneficiary was changed on his policy. So, in case something happens to Barb, then the money goes to this secondary beneficiary. And it was set to where a small portion would go to Casey's sister, but the largest portion will go to Barb's niece, not his sister, not his sister's kids, not anyone else in his family. It would go to his niece-in-law. And I'm talking about a policy that's worth $1.5 million.
Well, maybe they were like really close.
Not as close as he was to his own niece and nephew.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or his sister or his mom. I mean, you could just run down the list. I don't think anyone believes that this non-blood related niece would trump everyone in his family. And they believe that he wasn't the one who actually made that change to the policy. Now, Caleb's policy paid out pretty quick, but Casey's sister called up the insurance company to ask some questions about that niece. That sparked them to put a hold on that payout and start an investigation of their own. And then in November of 2019, more stuff started coming out. Yes, there's more. Casey's family, along with his agent friend, was contacted by Karen. Now, Karen's a woman from LA who was friends with Casey. She actually says that they had an emotional relationship. They hung out, they hiked, they loved dogs. They just had a lot in common. And they had met way back in 2009. And even she had no idea that he was married. So that would have been pre-Barb.
Yeah.
And he never once said, hey, I met a girl, or hey, I got married. So it was really odd. And then they found out about Tommy. Now, a woman on the island named Tommy came forward and said that she also knew Casey, that they had been classmates, and he was involved with her and her kids. Like, they hung out, they did things together. She had actually arranged a memorial service for him in Anguilla. Even though they had only been on the island for 4 months, there was over 120 people who came to that memorial for Casey, including Barb. But Barb didn't even tell his family that there was a memorial. And this was the final straw. Both families hired their own investigators. They're like, okay, the insurance company's investigating. We're not hearing anything from the cops in Anguilla. We'll just get our own people. Casey's family hired a guy from the States that had worked on the Natalie Holloway case. He even wrote a book about it. And Caleb's family hired one that was actually on the island.
So are the cops investigating?
Well, they have an open coroner's inquest on the island, so they said they were, but couldn't share any case information or evidence with the family's investigators. And it was 3 years after their deaths that Barb got ants in her pants. She wanted that life insurance money, so she filed a lawsuit against the insurance company. And they said, okay, you know what? We will settle. We'll pay out. But you 4 have to come in and testify under oath and tell us what happened that night. So they went to federal court in California. But witnesses were put under a gag order, and the evidence was locked down from the investigators and the families still. The families weren't even allowed in there when they testified, so they still have no idea what the hell happened. Barbara, Carly, and Chuck were all deposed. They gave their version of events, but Chuck's wife, Alicia, pled the fifth. Now, no one knows why she would plead the fifth, but some say maybe she was worried because allegedly they found cocaine and MDMA in her makeup bag in the apartment that night, kind of pointing towards her being the one who brought it. And that's all allegedly. And Barb, she went back to emailing her friends. She likes to email people.
Mm-hmm.
But she's saying that the authorities in Anguilla now have a theory about what happened. Note that they would not have to have a theory had the 4 just told them what the hell happened. But anyways, they theorized that Caleb and Casey got into an argument that night. I guess she was trying to say that the that drink that was laced, that maybe Caleb had put it in there or was accused of putting it in there. And Casey, now under heavy doses of the drugs, strangled Caleb in that fight. And then he ended up overdosing after. But Barb's story has changed more than once. Hell, this was widely reported that only Caleb and Casey went back to the bar to look for the flip-flops until she suddenly remembered that she went too.
She can't keep her story straight.
She cannot. I mean, how do you forget you went to the damn thing, that you drank something that was poison, okay. In 2022, the judge allowed the insurance company to pay out Casey's policy in full. So Barb got her money. I don't know what came out in that court, but apparently they're like, okay, we accept that. And the Anguilla authorities say that they subpoenaed those final 4 to come answer some questions on that inquest back in 2020. But all 4 say, we never got that subpoena. We were never summoned. They actually have the paperwork showing that they were. So either it's fake paperwork or these people are lying.
Yep.
And the Anguillan authorities had also requested assistance from the US and the UK because they're part of the Commonwealth of Nations. And there's nothing showing that either country has helped, but I doubt that'd be something they'd broadcast. As per usual, there have been a lot of theories on this case. Consensus seems to be that most people believe that this could have been some kind of sex party gone wrong. And this is more of a can't rule it out theory to me, that maybe the strangulation was more erotic asphyxiation that got out of hand because of the drug use, like they didn't understand what they were doing. I don't know. Something that I haven't seen talked about is that based on their own stories, each couple was in a different location of the apartment, the balcony, the living room, and the bedroom. So all the couples are separated, meaning that if their story is true and Caleb was strangled, we know that now, the only person in the room with him was his wife, Carly. So I don't know if they realize their story is pointing a finger, to me anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Like, who else did it? Another scenario that I thought of, and this is just spitballing here, was that Barb spiked the drink. Like, she was not happy that he didn't have a steady job. Maybe she found out about the other women. Who knows? But she didn't think about Casey sharing the drink. And then, he offered it to her. So to avoid suspicion, she drank a small amount so that it didn't look, odd. Which would be why she got sick as soon as she got back to the apartment. Maybe she made herself throw up to try to get as much of it out of her system as she could. And that would explain why she only had mild symptoms compared to the men. And maybe Caleb and Casey felt the effects, blamed each other, or maybe Caleb blames Barb and they get into a fight. Emotions are high. Casey strangles him in the fight and then succumbs to the drugs.
I mean, that's possible.
To me, that's possible.
Mm-hmm.
And you can maybe blame Casey's black eye and bruising on hitting something when he fell, when he was having that seizure, or they could have been from them maybe holding him down when he was having the seizure to keep him from moving around and hurting himself more. But that does not explain the strangulation manually or with a ligature. So you can't really go that way.
Yeah.
And that's why I added all the injuries up in the fight. Like, it all ended up to a fight to me. The bruising on the body, the black eye. I mean, it could.
That confused me too when we talked about it.
Yeah, it could. It could all be.
And you said Casey's black eye. I think you meant
Caleb's. I knew I was going to mess this up. They're too close together. I knew it.
I think there might have been another woman based on what they were talking about, like with him being emotionally involved with somebody at the island and then another girl being in LA. Like, well, I didn't even know he was married.
Right. Yeah. So that's what they're saying, is maybe he was actually they call him a ladies' man in a couple of the reports.
Oh.
So yeah, I'm pretty sure he was diddling around. But either way, nothing has been done on this case. This is where we're at. And this case goes in the same bucket with Christian Andriacchio and Brandon Embry cases for me, under the why is nothing being done umbrella. And sadly, we have a lot of cases like that. But that's all we have on this one. I guess everybody's cool with what happened, except his family, both families. So I don't know. Sorry to bust y'all's bubble. We're going to end on a cliffhanger because that's all we got. So if you like our content and want to contribute, we always accept likes, shares, subscriptions. We also have a Cash App. Our cash tag is $MWTM pod.
We also have Buy Me a Coffee. Find us at buymeacoffee.com/MWTM. And don't forget to tell your friends as always.
That's right.
Did so good.
Bye.
Oh, bye.